You may have clicked on this video with great hesitation, worried that you stumbled upon another social media guru that's going to give you the most bland advice you've ever heard on how to grow on social media and build a monetizable brand. You may be waiting for me to give you surface level advice such as be authentic, be consistent, and use hashtags. But I've never been basic in my entire life, and I'm not about to start now. Earlier this year, I built my TikTok following to over 60,000 people in under 6 months. And then in the last few months, I grew my Instagram following from 10,000 unengaged followers that were in a completely different niche to almost 50,000 followers in just the last 3 months. And even more recently, this YouTube channel just hit 1,000 subscribers, and I have not posted very many videos. And this isn't even my first rodeo. I built a sizable audience in the martial arts niche as well that allowed me to have a business that sustained me all the way through college without having to get a standard job. And I have now worked with over 400 content creators and business owners, helping them build their personal brand online into something that is actually monetizable, sustainable, and enjoyable for them. And what I've learned through all of this is that most of the advice centering around social media is band-aid advice, meaning it addresses the surface of the problem without really getting to the root of it. Advice like be authentic sounds good on paper, but in reality, most people aren't coming onto social media intentionally being somebody that they're not. It's something that just happens. You naturally have this video voice or this persona that turns on, likely as a way to protect yourself. So simply being told be authentic doesn't address the root of the problem as to maybe why you aren't able to show up authentically, or what authenticity really even means in the context of showing up online, because nobody is 100% authentic. So in today's video, I want to highlight some of the most important advice I've given to myself and to clients that have helped them see the growth that they're after. Anyone who is building a personal brand online or a business that's connected to their personal brand can benefit from what I'm about to say. This is not going to be a video where I tell you what hashtags to use, what time you should post, or how many times you should post a week, because in all honesty, that's some of the most least relevant advice when it comes to building a personal brand online. So let's get into it, shall we? Most of your ideas are going to flop. And that's okay. So many of you are trying to come up with the perfect strategy. You're trying to pinpoint and do all this research that's going to allow you to identify the type of content that is going to allow you to see success. You may have taken tons of notes on things you notice in your favorite creators and how you can maybe emulate those things. And in the time that you've done all of that, I've already tested 10 to 20 video concepts and gotten real data from the platform to know what's working, what's not working, what can I improve, what do I need to change in order for my next video to do even better. Nobody in the entire world can sit here and say this video is for sure going to go viral. The only way to truly know if a concept is going to work is to test it. I accept that most of my ideas are going to flop, which is why I work to put out as many of my ideas as possible so that I can find the one that doesn't. Because no matter how much research you've been done, you cannot guarantee that your strategy will work. You could have done all of that work and then you could have filmed those 3 types of content and realized that you actually hate making that type of content and you're going to burn out on it very quickly. Or you can find that the audience didn't react to these concepts the way that you thought they would. And you just wasted all of that time putting all of your eggs in that basket, and now you have to start from scratch making a whole nother list and presentation and competitor analysis and whatever. To me, it's much more comfortable to come to terms with the fact that most of your ideas are going to fail. Most of your concepts aren't going to work, but it only takes that one idea to work to cancel out all of the ones that failed. And the reason people struggle with this is because they're afraid to be seen trying. You're afraid that people are going to see that the views aren't doing well and you're out here trying to be a content creator or a business owner. Who do you think you are? And these people who are unhappy in their own lives are going to be talking about you behind your back in their DMs or whatever the case may be. All you have to remember is that you have already taken a step that those people will never take, and that's simply putting yourself out there. That in itself is something that most people are too afraid to do and will always be too afraid to do. When you listen to an interview from the most successful people in the world, almost all of them will tell you that they have failed way more times than they've succeeded. Yet when you think about Jeff Bezos, all you remember is that he started Amazon, which is one of the biggest companies in the world. You don't think about the fact that Apple was going to go into bankrupt at one point in time and that Microsoft was actually who had to bail them out. You just remember that Steve Jobs as one of the most innovative minds when it comes to technology. So while in the short term, maybe somebody will find amusement in your failures, when you succeed, people are only going to remember the things that you were really good at. Remember that failure is not an attack on your worth. It is simply data. It is information that can help you make better decisions in the future. I recently read the book, The Psychology of Money, and there's a quote in the book that says something similar to 50% of your investments can fail and you can still make a fortune. And to kind of condense what the rest of the chapter was about, basically what it stated is that if the outcome of winning at something once outweighs the outcome of failing at something 9 times, then you only need to win 1 out of 10 times to see a return on your investment. And this goes much further when it comes to social media, because what is the downside of posting a piece of content? The content doesn't do well, and maybe some loser who has nothing better to do with their time but talk about somebody who they don't really know that well, or somebody that they knew a long time ago, has something to say about you behind your back in the DMs. But what is the upside? It can be a way for you to work less hours and make more money. It can give you leverage in your job to establish yourself as a thought leader so that you can get higher paying positions. It can be something that gives you the comfort and the safety to have a savings account that allows you to not worry whether or not your job is going to fire you, because you have a fail safe, so you don't have to tolerate as much disrespect from anybody at work. It can be something that leads to huge opportunities for you, such as opportunities to travel more, to write a book, to start a business. It can be a way for you to earn more money. There are infinite possibilities that come from successfully building an online presence, and the outcome of failing at a video being posted is almost nothing. In other words, even if you fail 1 million times at posting content on social media, being successful at it once outweighs all of them. The secret is to give yourself as much room to fail as possible, meaning don't be so quick to leave your stable job to pursue content creation, because that puts pressure on the content and it makes the stakes of posting a bad video much higher. When I first started my business, it took off immediately. I was making anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 every single month, which was unfathomable money to me. I could have easily upgraded my lifestyle. I could have put a down payment on a house. I could have upgraded my clothing and done all of these things, but you know what I did instead? I saved most of it. And it's a really good thing that I did, because a few months later, I would have to spend almost $10,000 trying to rescue a cat that I had taken care of that I saw outside, who would have a life-threatening disease, and I would spend any amount of money to try and save him and still be unsuccessful, which would send me into a huge mental health spiral where I wasn't doing well and I had absolutely nothing to give, on top of balancing issues with people in my family who have a huge ego and, make everything about them, etc., etc. After that, I made almost no money for 2.5 months because I had nothing to give. Had I spent all of the money that I had made when things were going good on upgrading my lifestyle, I would not be sitting in front of this camera talking to you about how I had a successful 6-figure business this year. But I gave myself as much room to fail as possible. The second thing is that I stopped following other people's blueprint to success. Just because a lot of people found success in one thing doesn't mean you will. And equally, just because a lot of people failed at something doesn't mean you won't succeed. When we want to accomplish something, naturally we look for people who have done what we are trying to do. And that makes us feel safe and secure that we can do it too. And then we look to this person as a guide on how we're going to get there. They become the blueprint for our success. We often emphasize what we have in common with that creator or business owner without paying attention to all of the ways we are different. Things like economic status, race, timing, the economy, and politics, what the algorithm favors, personal connections, etc., are all variables that may drastically change the way that you approach content creation. It's important to figure out what you have to offer. It's totally okay to be inspired by somebody. I think inspirations are a great thing, but their story is not your story. A few questions that would help you identify what your blueprint is and how you can best show up online would be things like, what do people in your real life say about you? What is your unique gift? How do you naturally speak? What is the content you wish existed? How much time do you have to dedicate to content? Knowing the answers to these questions are going to help you establish yourself as the blueprint and create your own story and create a content strategy that aligns with your strengths and weaknesses, your schedule, how you identify, etc. Number 3, you have to give your seeds enough time to sprout. Y'all are impatient. You try out a concept once, maybe 3 times, and if it doesn't work within those 3 times, then it's useless and you change your strategy completely. Lizzo was plugging Truth Hurts for 2 years before it took off. Chappell Roan was singing Pink Pony Club 10 years before she found her success. Sabrina Carpenter had put out 4 albums before she finally found the success that she has now. They were always talented. They always had a good product. They just needed their stuff to be put in front of the right people, and they needed it to be packaged in the right way. Heck, I could probably grow my audience a lot faster if I put on a crazy crazy persona and I had all these gimmicks in my videos and I transitioned to several places, but I want to be making content for the next 10 to 15 years. And that's not going to be sustainable for me if I have to do all of that. So instead, I would rather plant the seeds and water them every day so that they can grow into a beautiful garden over time. I want to build an audience of people who just like me as a human being, someone that people can see themselves in, and somebody who is respected as a thought leader in their industry. But so many of you constantly change your strategy and you're always trying to do the most crazy things so that you can grow faster, that you burn out before you can ever get the fruits of your labor. Whereas if you just showed up consistently, and not just consistently in how often you post, but consistently in how you show up, meaning you harp on similar messages, you show up in a similar way, you're just a constant presence that doesn't go away, you will eventually catch on. You will grow an audience. I think of it like the stock market. Day traders have a much higher chance of losing and burning out and losing all of their money. Whereas long-term investors who plan on investing their money for the next 20 to 30 years almost pretty much always see a return on their investment. So relying on gimmicks is very risky because it may not even bring you the success that you want. And even if it does, how sustainable is that? It's not always about doing the most efficient thing. Sometimes it's about doing the most sustainable thing. This YouTube channel is a perfect example for that. I post predominantly vlogs on my YouTube channel, even though I know that if I made more content like this video, I would probably grow faster. It's more important to me that I'm using YouTube as a place that people can actually be attracted to me as a human being who can resonate with my story and see themselves in my story and see inspiration from somebody who is on the same path that they are, than for me to grow an audience as quickly as possible using SEO friendly advice given videos, because I don't want to be only as good as the advice that I can provide. Will it take me longer to build an audience? Probably. Will I have an audience that actually is interested in what I have to say and opens up opportunities for me outside of just being a social media coach? Yeah. Number 4, I treat my content like a journal rather than a stage. This is one of the most important lessons I can teach anybody and is oftentimes one of the most difficult hurdles that I have to help my clients overcome. People tend to think of their content from the audience's perspective. They ask things like, what would make my target audience stop scrolling? Does it make sense to paint when my content is mostly about yoga? How can I make sure I don't offend anybody or don't get misconstrued in my content? By doing this, you are giving all of your power away to the audience, and content creation has nothing to do with you anymore, even though you started content creation to be something that you could be excited to show up and do every single day. Instead, recognize that you are probably trying to build this brand or this business to be somebody that you did need or do need today. So all you have to do to attract the audience that's going to resonate with your brand is to speak to yourself in the most raw, unfiltered way possible. When you treat your content like a journal, there's a reason to post outside of how well the video performs. Whereas when you're always creating content for an audience, the only thing that you have to care about in the video is how the audience perceived it. And that is a recipe for burnout. You'll also be able to speak in a way that actually impacts people, because if you're speaking to yourself, you're not afraid to give yourself tough love, a reality check. You're not afraid to show some compassion for yourself. You're not afraid to go into all the nitty-gritty details and nuances that make the situation more interesting. You don't worry whether or not you'll misconstrue yourself, so don't worry about whether or not your audience will misconstrue you. And I want to make you aware of one very simple thing. No matter what you do, people will misconstrue you. People will take your words or take your content as something outside of what your intention was. But all you're doing by adding a bunch of disclaimers and possibilities and trying to make sure you address every possible thing that someone could take away from the video is watering down your message for the people who would actually resonate with what you have to say. And you're still not going to attract those people who you're trying to prove wrong or trying to not be misconstrued by. Think about what is the worst possible outcome of someone misconstruing you. They leave a hate comment, it makes you feel bad for a few minutes, and then the world keeps spinning. It is not your job to satisfy people who will never understand what your message is in the first place. It is your job to speak clearly to the people who will resonate with you. And it's all of those nitty-gritty thoughts that you have in your head that you think that nobody will understand that will actually make your content more interesting, because that's what nobody has said yet. The reason that you don't think anyone will understand them is because you haven't heard anybody else talk about them. But again, refer back to the idea that you are not as unique as you think you are. If there's anything the internet has taught us, it's that we have never lived a unique experience. So when you find that thing that you feel like no one else understands, that's probably a good indication that it's something that you should share, because it gives you the chance to be the first to say something that a lot of people are thinking but are too afraid to speak out loud. Number 5, you need to decenter the results. I know that nobody wants to hear just focus on the process and the results will come. I mean, after all, you're putting time every day into content. You're coming up with the ideas, you're filming it, you're editing it, you're posting it, and opening yourself up to public scrutiny. Of course, you want a result from that, but here's the problem. People can feel your energy through your content, and if you're creating from a place that seems desperate, people will sniff that out. Your content will seem so overly strategic in a way that any modern audience would be able to sniff out in a heartbeat. Creating from desperation also blocks your creativity, because now you're too afraid to try those really weird ideas that no one's done before, and you tend to stick to what has worked in the past, even though what has worked in the past may not work for you, as we discussed earlier. You're looking for a strategy that feels safe, even though being safe has never been a stable strategy for standing out. Don't focus on how each piece of content is going to reach your bottom line. Instead, show up every single day asking, how can I be the best version of myself and say what I need to hear or did need to hear at one point related to what I talk about online. And whether you say it, you act it out in a skit, you write it, whatever your medium of content is, express what you need through that medium and watch how fast you grow. I don't know what number I'm on, but my next piece of advice is that not all of your content needs to relate back to your business. You are building a personal brand. Even if you have a business, if your business is heavily reliant on you as a person, people need to get to know you as the person. And that's not to say you can't grow an audience by only talking about things related to your business. If you're a fitness coach and all you do is post workouts and hot takes about the fitness industry, you can absolutely grow an audience. You can even make sales from that audience and earn a really great income for a while. But then you are boxing yourself into that niche for all of time. What happens if in 5 years you realize that fitness isn't actually what you want to pursue and you want to become a writer? You're going to have a very hard time converting this audience into someone who cares about your writing, because all they've ever known about you is fitness. Whereas if you had subtly been posting things on your Instagram stories about things you're writing, or if you vlog and do fitness vlogs on YouTube, if you incorporated like some of your dreams about being a writer, throughout those vlogs, it would have been easier to transition that audience over and make that transition in your life. And the other thing you have to remember, taking again the example of fitness, but this applies pretty much to anything, is that most people are not going to achieve their fitness goals. So when they're no longer on that journey, what is the reason they have to follow you? And you may say that you don't care about attracting people who aren't active in their fitness journey, but you know that those people are likely going to start that fitness journey again. Don't you still want to be the first person that comes up on their feed when they re-enter that journey? And this leads me to my next and probably my most important point of this video. Creating an emotional story that people can see themselves in is far more valuable than providing straight up value. How many times have you heard some social media guru tell you that the key to growing an audience online is providing as much value as possible? And in theory, they're right. You can build a sizable audience and you can make a lot of money by simply providing value to people. But it is a flawed strategy when it comes to building a brand long term, because nowadays there's a lot of people providing really great value. So the bar of the level of value that's needed in order to stand out continues to increase. If your goal is to make sales in your business or get people to work with you in some way, then you want your content to be the thing that makes them click that link or take that action to work with you or buy from you. But with the level of advice that's being given now, if your strategy is solely to provide the best value possible, well, then the action that someone's going to take is to implement that advice into their life in whatever realm that is and what you talk about, and then, keep it moving. They might follow you, they might appreciate you, but you made no money at the end of the day. But if you instead focus your content on creating an emotional movement and telling your story and your highs and lows and all of the things you've learned and all of the wins and losses you've had, you are now becoming something that people can see themselves in and aspire to be. Getting a follow doesn't mean you've gained a fan. People become fans of those that they can see parts of themselves in, and people who represent something that they can aspire to, or just someone that they can relate to, someone that validates the way that they live their life. One thing you learn in business is that people buy a feeling much faster than they buy a product. Instead of trying to convince people that you're the best at what you do, or that the way that you help people is the best way to help people, or that the service or product that you provide is the best one out there, Just be someone that people like. Be someone that people can see themselves in. Build a movement of people who are all working toward a similar goal or who represent a similar thing. There's actually a piece of data that applies to therapists, but I think it has implications for many industries, and that is that the number one indication on whether or not someone will find success in therapy is the relationship and the connection that they have with their therapist. Because again, people may be motivated by the result, but the thing that's going to make someone stick around with you or want to be around you long term or be involved in your world long term is going to be if they simply just like you, if they enjoy the process of being around you. One of my most successful videos on Instagram is a video where I am chanting about how grateful I am for the life I have lived as somebody who's been through a lot of trauma, as somebody who grew up in poverty, as somebody who has overcome a lot of obstacles, how I have built myself into living my dream life. It has over 1 million views, and even one of my biggest music artist icon inspirations of my life, SZA, commented on it, and that's what you see framed over here. I didn't give any advice on how somebody could do the same thing that I did, and people appreciated that. What I did instead was become a representation of somebody who doesn't let their past define their future and who shows that it is possible to build your dream life even when you come from less than ideal circumstances. That is going to connect somebody for me for a much longer period of time than if I gave them some great advice on social media. Did I know that that video would do so well? Definitely not. I don't put that kind of pressure on any video I make. I could go on and on forever, but I think that that's enough for this video. But if you want me to make a part 2 of more strategies that have helped me build a 6-figure business using only social media, let me know in the comments. But that being said, this is not the normal type of content I post. I typically post cozy vlogs that are documenting my healing journey, that are documenting my process of becoming a more successful business owner, documenting the process of me building my dream life, and all of the highs, lows, wins, losses, and tips that come with that. I don't think enough people are documenting the reality and the day-to-day of what it takes to build this life for yourself, and I wish I had started earlier, but I figured that this upcoming year was a great place to start. So if that interests you, definitely consider subscribing, hit that bell icon so that you can be notified when I upload new videos, and check out some of the vlogs. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok for daily doses of motivation, advice, inspiration, and tips on how to build your online brand. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!